homesick. But he probably would have been probably the most famous in my family. But I know that there were a number of young people who, through sports, excelled in the community.
Probably my brother, Bug. We call him Bug, but his name is Walter. I think he almost got to one of those baseball tryouts. But that's the only thing I can remember.
The only thing I remember is coming up is my uncles and everything would say, young boy, yes sir, you gotta learn a little bit of everything in order to get along in this world. They had us working out on different types of machines and everything else. We didn't get a chance to escape from nothing. Digging ditches, to learning how to cut lumber for houses and everything. They taught us you gotta learn a little bit of everything. I used to get so mad, I wanna go play or something. Nope, come on, you gotta go with me.
But isn't it funny how we learned to do everything? Like, when it was time to paint the house, you painted the house.
Yes, you did.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Nowadays, these kids act like they can't do anything.
Video games.
Video games and computers and stuff like that.
They don't even go outside and play.
I mean, when it came to taking care of the house, you did everything.
Yes, you did. So I think we touched on this a little bit. What types of jobs were available in this area? I think we touched on that.
Yeah.
Are there stories you'd like to share about Guilford life that were passed down from your parents or other ancestors? Any stories that were passed down about anyone in your family?
Just for me, the memory of my mother saying all the people who lived in one house together. And nowadays, we have to have a house that has so many bathrooms and so many bedrooms and a family room, a living room, and a den. And basically for them, almost every room was a bedroom, and there was no bathroom. But there was no private space for young people, and now kids have their own rooms and their own bathrooms and all that. How when they had less in terms of finances, they had so much more in terms of love and sharing and a sense of community than we have now. No one seemed to complain about sharing a bed with two other siblings or anything like that. No one seemed to complain about having to have a chamber pot in the bedroom because that's just the way it was. You didn't know it any other way. And like I complain now as I'm looking to buy or build a home that I can't have a house without a master bathroom in my master bedroom and whatnot. So just for me, the sense of family that was so important at that time.
I'm just thinking the stories that my parents taught us or shared with us. One thing that my parents always shared was that it doesn't matter how much you make, it's what you do with what you make. And then they always used to tell us, you don't have to have a lot of things, only have the things that you need. Because a lot of times I find now is that we get so many things, but we really don't need them. And I try to pass that down to my kids, like, you have a lot of wants, but you don't really need them. And I also try to tell my kids, like, it doesn't matter how much money you make, because they always talk about, oh, I need another job, I need to make more money. And I'm saying, it doesn't matter how much money you make, is what you do with your money, because you can still make a lot of money and still not go any further than you were with the money that you had before, because it's what you do with it. And my mother passed that down to me, and I passed that down to my children, and now I'm saying the same thing to my grandkids, because I want them to know that don't always think you're going to have so much all the time, because you don't really need all that stuff. You don't need it. And then when you get it, and because if you always want stuff and always get stuff, then later in life when you're on your own and you can't afford all that stuff, then that causes a lot of problems in your life. That's what I try to tell them.
My parents always said, we're not giving you other than what you need, because you'll cherish it more if you earn it. And I learned a lesson behind that, because I gave my son a car. He went out. I explained it to him. This car is for you to get back and forth to work, not to ride up down the road with all your friends and stuff. And he, like, loaded off in the sky. So when the car broke down, here he come to Dad. Dad, my car ain't running. I said, okay, what did Dad tell you? I know what you told me. I said, well, go get your friends to help you fix it. Come back. I said, what happened? I ain't got nobody to help me. I said, well, I tell you what, you earn enough money, you get the parts, your dad will help you fix it, but your dad ain't giving you no more. You gonna earn it. And because that's what my parents told me. If I give it to you, you ain't gonna cherish it like it would if you earned it yourself. And that's the best thing I learned from my parents, that when you give a child too much,
Yeah.
they don't appreciate it.
Nope.
Let them earn it. That's the best way to teach them a lesson.
Are there any like classic songs or jokes that your family, would talk about? Any favorite songs? Any jokes that would be?
The one song that I remember, my father from a little kid always sang, "I'm just a stranger traveling through this burdened land, just up his journey, deep and wide." He sang that song to us all the time.
He did.
All the time.
I've never heard your father sing.
All the time. my father, he would sing to us all the time.
He would. Wow.
When I was about 11 or 12, I asked for a tape recorder for Christmas. And that Christmas, we had dinner at our house, and my grandmother, Grandma Rose Anderson, sang, and we were her background singers. And she said, she was like trying to sing and direct us and tell us what we were going to say. So she sang, "I'm determined to walk with Jesus." And she said, okay, so I'm going to say, "I'm determined to walk with Jesus." And you're going to say, "Yes, I am." And so she would say, "I'm determined to walk with Jesus." And we weren't paying attention. Now y'all supposed to say, "Yes, I am." And just how much we laughed to listen to my grandmother trying to direct us as her background choir for "I'm determined to walk with Jesus, yes I am." And another song that she did as a solo was "Oh Holy Night," and having a recording of my grandmother's voice during "Oh Holy Night." Now I don't know what happened to that tape player or that cassette tape, but I can remember hearing my grandmother sing that song and hitting those high notes, and as children we were laughing in the background. But I can also remember on the recording my mother saying, "Oh, she sounds pretty good." But so having all of our voices on that recording just became a source of laughter for us for many years. We talk about that recordings
so tired of hearing Mahalia Jackson, Marie Knight, and all of them, that every time my mother and father went away, I'd sneak up and try to find some kind of other music to listen to. But you'd stay peeping out that window, because when that car come back, you get back to that station.
That's all they knew.
That's all that, I mean, that's all you heard from sun up to sundown was religious music.
So what do you miss the most about the way things used to be in Guilford?
I know for me, just, and this hurts me to my heart, but just not being able to see those faces of yesterday. And as a young person, always thinking that people were always going to be around. And when you look back, that they're not there anymore, just missing their company and missing their words of encouragement and missing their love.
I miss the fellowship. Years ago, we were all family, and even the whole community, the inside community and the outside community. And we, there was always something going on at the church that all the communities came together, whether you were in Simpsonville or you were in one spot or here, all the community came together, and we would go visit their churches and they would visit. I really do miss that, because now I just don't feel like there's enough fellowship going on. And that's how we got to know people. And now I just feel like, for me here at this church, I see people, but I don't know the people. They're just here.
It's different.
I don't know them. I speak to them when I see them because I know their faces and they know me, but I really don't know them because we don't have that fellowship like we had. We don't socialize like we used to with our neighbors. It's how I feel. I miss it.
I do too. I miss that. I miss that a lot. There's one church that we used to visit, and I cannot think of the name of it. It's in Jessup. It's one of those small churches. I can see that church, but I cannot think of the name of it.
I know exactly which one you're talking about. It's further down.
Hattie Hepburn's
Yes,
church.
yes. I know
What's
which
the
one.
name of that church?
I can't remember the name, but
Me
it's
either.
still there.
It's a United Methodist church.
Yes, it's still
and I
there.
believe it's the church that you were speaking about last week when you and I had a conversation about the United Methodist Church, African American United Methodist Church. I really believe that's the church.
Yeah, it's
But
still
I
there.
cannot think of the name of it. It's down there off of Brockridge Road, I think. Frank?
You talking,
Down there where Keith Coleman's family lived.
Live, yeah, I know what you're talking
I
about.
cannot think of the name of
Is
that
it called
church.
Jessup?
No.
It's another, Pains or something like that.
Is it Payne?
Oh yeah, that's what it's called.
I think that's what it's called.
It's called Pains.
Oh, okay.
That's what it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
what do you miss
yeah.
most about the way things used to be in Guilford, Frank?
Well, today, Guilford is not like the Guilford I grew up in, because if somebody called, well, back then and there, every kid had a nickname. Today, there's no nickname. They got all of these sophisticated names. Half time you can't remember them, spell them, or whatever. But if somebody came, hey, such and such,
Yeah, that's my school name.
I know he's from Guilford because that's the old nickname. Nobody has nicknames no more, so that's what I really miss, because just like her brother P-Fo, or
And Bug.
Bug, all of this,
It
you know.
fit. Look, fit.
Yeah, where
you
did
know-
that come from?
You know they from Guilford,
Yes.
because everybody in Guilford had a nickname.
Exactly.
That's what I really
Settle something
miss.
for me. It's been a long, long time thing I stand by. You don't give yourself a nickname, right?
No.
Yeah, exactly. Other people give you nicknames.
Right.
Yeah,
So when somebody comes up to you and says, "Call me this," you're like, "No, We make up your name. You don't tell us what your name is, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay, just making sure.
Yeah.
So, do you have any artifacts, and I'm sure you have old family photos, but do you have any artifacts from any of your ancestors? You have anything?
Like I have this picture of so this would be my great grandfather and his wife.
Really? What's his name?
Put it to the camera, Susan.
His name is Eddie and her name is Sally.
Really?
And the sad part is I don't have any pictures of my grandfather Jacob Coleman or his wife.
You think he might have one?
None of the family. We're trying to. One person in the family said they think they have a picture of my grandfather Jacob, but of course there's no. We've been getting her to try to share it with us, but we haven't had any success.
So you can't, when you Google his name, no picture comes up? Wow, it's gotta be a picture of
And I
him
was
somewhere.
told there weren't a lot of pictures back then because the families were poor, they couldn't afford cameras
Yeah,
to take
that's
pictures.
true.
But this is from Virginia. One of our relatives in Virginia gave us this. And somewhere in here is my grandfather Jacob.
Really?
And we're trying to narrow, we're using the census to try to narrow them down. So my husband and I have been trying to work on that.
Okay.
Because in Virginia, one of the houses burned up and it had a lot of the pictures in it, but it caught fire and burned a lot of pictures. But we do have this
I'm
one.
gonna take a scan of this.
Toreen, you got anything?
I didn't bring anything today, but I know that I have pictures of my grandmother younger, and a picture of her with her mother, Viola, and my mom has pictures of them when they were much younger, but I don't have any in my possession.
Okay, Frank?
No, I don't have nothing.
You have a picture of your mother right there, Miss Marie.
Yeah, but that's not an old one. This is in the later years.
Okay.
But there are some pictures somewhere my sister said. She done packed them away and she couldn't find where she packed them at, so I had to deal with that. But my father and them, they didn't take too many pictures.
So, is there anything that we did not ask you about Guilford? Now's your opportunity to add it.
That's pretty a lot of questions.
Had to pull it out of it.
You guys did a great job.
Can I ask a couple follow-ups?
Sure.
There was a mention of an Arthur family. I don't know who mentioned the last name of Arthur.
Lorraine Arthur,
It might have been.
yeah, she was a school teacher at principal at Guilford School.
Okay. Was her husband? I know that the last name Arthur was also associated with a school trustee kind of a thing, but doesn't ring a bell.
No, all I know was her. She was principal of Guilford Elementary School when I went to it.
The same thing with, I think you mentioned an Uncle Boston,
Ernest Boston.
Ernest Boston. Was that, because I recognize the last name Boston also associated with some school activity. It might have been Daniel Boston.
I would know that his father, I mean, I talk about nicknames, they called him Sykes. I don't even remember what his father's name was. I don't know about him being associated with the school board or anything.
Neither did I, but he is.
Frank, you mentioned the hay scales. What were they? You mentioned on the bus, you would have to catch a bus at,
All right, the hay scale, right down here, it was a tree. It was like a triangle. It was a road come up Guilford, and it turned to come up into Oakland Mill. Guilford Road went around, and then there was another little road came down and went around that. and it was a big tree and a stone there, and we used to call it the hay scales. That's where we caught the bus at.
Why was it called hay scales?
I don't know. It was named that when we didn't come down. Where we going? We're going down to the hay scales to catch your bus.
Okay.
Probably had a scale there.
They might have had a scale
Same
there
one I
back
said,
there.
we're
They
going
might
down
have
the
sold
pike.
stuff.
Like
The
with
pike.
yeah, where you going, down the pike?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, quick question about the photograph. When do you think that photograph is from? What date? Not sure. And this is your family.
Yes,
Okay.
this would be Jacob's father and mother,
So this would be your
my great grandparents
grandparents. Okay. Great.
on my father's side.
Do you know where this photograph was taken?
Well, we got it from Virginia, so it had to be taken in the Virginia.
You also
Anybody else want to
talked-
add? Feel free.
Yeah, please. You all talked about the orchards and the fruit trees.
Yes.
You know, just to let you know that's what this area once was very famous for. Back even in the late 1700s, they advertised great orchards. So that, I mean, they were growing fruit trees, quite a lot. But I also wanted to ask just a little bit about maybe not go back, but what's your current day impression of Savage is from today? I know the past wasn't the most pleasant, but is that all gone? Ancient history?
You could say it's gone, but in your mind you still think of it. But when you go through there now, it's like, wow, you just can't believe the transformation that has taken place. For me, because before, I guess when they first started letting people come into Savage, I remember going down the neighborhood. I accidentally drove my car down the wrong neighborhood. People were sitting with the porch and they were like, I was like, ooh, like, I gotta get up out of here. But now I'm going through there, it's just like any other neighborhood to
It
me.
never happened.
Well,
Well, they said, well, I don't know that. I mean, I guess that just still stays there.
it changed quite a bit because when I was young, I remember the school down is called Bethel, but that was the elementary school that my son went to, and I used to ride past it, but I never could even step on the ground.
In Bethel?
Now I say it's called Bethel now, but it used to be the
Savage Elementary.
Savage Elementary School that my son attended. They didn't even allow us, you could drive there to get whatever you wanted from Buddy Stewart's grocery store, but other than that, you go in, pick up what you want, back out in your car, and take off. Like I said, when I was a young boy, the Trailway, the Greyhound, all that road up through there, you could be on there, but you couldn't get off in Savage. You had to come all the way to US 1 and Guilford Road to get off.
Mr. Frank, was your family ever afraid of being lynched?
Well, like I said, most of the people know that if they knew you, it was all right. But if they didn't know you, they didn't go in Savage. There was also told that there was Klansmen in Savage. I never seen them, but it was mentioned to you as young. Watch out for the Klansmen. But like I said, they never bothered our family, and we lived over there. My uncle uncle and them lived over there for years and years. Once we moved up here, they still lived over there. And then, after we moved up here, then Miss Allison the Bradley's husband died, so she sold the property over there, so wasn't nobody left over there but my uncle and aunt for years. But they never bothered her.
Was that Volmerhausen or?
On Balmer House,
Okay. Yeah.
Even when I was a child, I remember going up Volmerhausen, but never going down, turning left to go down Savage, Guilford Road. We didn't go into Savage when I grew up in the 70s.
So one of the things we're trying to do is to look at asking the county to create possibly a Savage Guilford Historic District that goes, features the railroad, the connection between the two, or even a historic park to recognize, all the history there. How do you feel about that? Is that okay to be connected together, or is there something that needs to be done to? I know this is a long time ago. I'm not part of that history. Do you feel there's any healing that needs to be done, or that's just, I don't know.
I feel, because I never experienced, none of that. I have an uncle who, my grandmother's brother, he looked like a white man. And he would go to Savage and sit on the bar. They thought he was one of them, but he wasn't. And I used to work in Savage. I've done business in Savage. So I feel that that's past history, and this is the future. This is the present. So, you can't hold on to that. To me, you have to, because it's not happening to any of us now that I know of.
My feeling is if you want to get history out there and for people to live with, as long as it's just showing history, so will it really matter whether the two are combined?
And
It's part of the history of this.
That's what I'm saying, but he's saying would it be a problem with the two being
So, no, it
combined? And
wouldn't
I'm
be a
saying
problem.
it would. What difference would it make? Because really, all you're trying to do is show the history of Savage, the history of what happened years ago in this area. That's really what you're trying to do. Am I correct?
Yeah.
And as long as to me, it's an accurate retelling of history and telling all sides of history. But I also feel like in the Guilford community, we have a park in Guilford community, but what are some improvements that can be made to that community park on Guilford Road? There's no proper facilities at that park, whereas every other park in Howard County has bathrooms and running water, but that one doesn't. I mean, there could be a reason why, but whatever the reason why, this day and age, that's something that should be addressed. But I don't hold on to anything negative of the past anyway. I don't. But I believe in terms of history, it's important to tell the whole history, and we don't leave things out, because that is the history. That this is a historically black community that was really built around the church, and there are so many along Guilford Road and in Howard County that shouldn't be untold. That should be told.
I feel the same way. It's part of history. It's part of history.
I love history, good or
Me too.
bad.
Me too.
The thing that I like that it'll be out there for others to see,
Yes.
to really see what the history of this area was like.
Because we meet people, or I meet people day in and day out, who will even say, what, there was an all-black school in Howard County? They have no idea, so it's important that they know about the history of the communities.
Especially from the people that have lived here and experienced it like us. You know what I mean? When, did you come here in the 70s?
92.
92. Okay. Yeah, so.
See, the younger generation, when you tell them, when I be talking to some of the younger generation, that happened? Hey, no, that couldn't happen. I said, you didn't live it, brother, I did.
It's,
That's
it's
what I
good
know.
that they say that, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good that they say it, but they didn't think nothing like that, the way today is, back then, that things like that would go on.
And
Yeah.
really, if you look at it, our children today face some of the same problems that we face, but it's just in a different way.
Exactly.
And they just don't understand it.
They don't understand the connection.
Because we don't teach them any different, you know. Really, we don't. So I have a granddaughter who we had to go to the board of education because, you know, we didn't teach her to see, we teach her to see people, you know what I'm saying? And she went to Lime Kiln, and she had no idea at all any difference about color until she started getting attacks, and she couldn't understand why. It upset her, so we had to step in and, you know, do what we had to do.
My daughter was the same way. My daughter Nikita went to Bethel Christian Academy up until 8th grade. And there was a girl who came from Baltimore City, and she called her black. She came home so upset because the girl called her black. I said, well, you are black. She said, no, I'm not. I said, yes, you are. She did not know that. And I'm like, oh my God, what have I been doing? I know, sometimes you just assume things,
Right.
and nowadays we can't.
Right.
We really have to teach our children a lot.
Yeah, but children today, if you can put them in a circle, they don't look at color.
No, they don't.
The only time come color, if you mention it or I mention it.
Mhm.
If you know that's a white child or that's a black child you playing with, and they'll look at you and stare.
Yeah.
Because they just figure, that's my friend.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Color don't matter.
It doesn't.
I can tell you, my family moved here in 1980, so I was that second generation of Columbia kids. And, you know, but I came here when I was 6 years old. And let's see, gosh, I think I went to Thunderhill Elementary School first. And then we bounced around my first few years. But that was something that was very unique to me because even at a young age in Columbia, early Columbia, that was how we were taught. I mean, you know, and my parents, I got to see it from my parents. My parents grew up in Baltimore, and they grew up in the 60s in Baltimore, where, you know, everything's about race. So I gotta give my parents, you know, a lot of kudos for coming here and raising me in an environment where I was not that big of a deal. And I know it's a big deal everywhere else because I've got cousins and family who grew up in Arundel County, Carroll County, so on and so forth. And I can tell that they were just grown up. They were raised in a different environment than me. I can just tell. So definitely, you know, I think our community, at least the community that I grew up with in Columbia, was different and special in that regard.
Diverse. But this has been wonderful. I'm telling you, this has really brought joy to my heart. You
2
know?
hours and 10 minutes worth of quality.
Yes, I mean, it's nothing to seem like, you know, Wayne, do you have anything you
Did I
want to
tell you?
add?
Goes, you don't even realize how
Blown away.
I mean, it's just,
Blown
and
away.
this is
I've
just
learned
the
so
beginning.
much. I've learned so
This
much.
is just
Yeah,
the
I have
beginning.
too.
I mean,
I
you all are
really
the
did.
first
I've learned a lot from
families
Mr.
that
Frank.
we've
I
interviewed.
learned
It's
a
just the
lot from
beginning.
you
Wow.
and him.
We have 24 other families that
Wow.
interview
Doing
with
it-
stories.
Doing it together for this community
Mhm.
works so well.
It does.